So, someone once asked me what I take to a deserted island, and I literally said I would take a shopping centre because then I have food, I have books, I have clothes, I basically have everything that I need, and it constitutes as one thing. So basically, I've outsmarted the system. Kind of. Hi friends, my name is Joel and welcome back to my booktube channel. Today I'm going to be going over my top favourite books of 2020. One of them actually comes out in 2021 and some of them are just so amazing and I cannot wait to showcase them with you and hopefully inspire you to go pick them up, because there's definitely one book on this list that I'm not seeing talked about more widely and I literally need you all to go pick this book up. But before we get into that, if you've yet to check out my Twitter, nor my Bookstagram, I would highly recommend you go check those out because I post some extra bookish content that you're not gonna see here. Okay, so let us get into it because honestly, these books are just so amazing and I'm in love with each and every one of them. So my reading year this year was a bit weird. I didn't really read any proper books for pleasure until about May of last year. My first book was one of my favourite books of this year and that one was An Ember in the Ashes by Sabatahir. I read this through Audible and the audiobook and I just fell in love with every character's voice. I fell in love with the story and the way that Sabatahir wrote these descriptions and it was just amazing. And I really fell in love with Elia and Elias as characters and they were just so stunning. And then I immediately went into A Torch Against the Night immediately afterwards because it was amazing. So the story basically follows the Martial Empire, which under its harsh rule, defiance is met with death. But when Elia's brother is arrested for treason, Elia must risk her life by spying underneath the Empire's greatest military academy in the hopes that rebels that she is working for will be able to save her brother. There she meets Elias, who's basically the academy's finest, but secretly the most unwilling soldier, and he wants to be free of this oppressive society, and so he and Elia soon realize that their destinies are more intertwined than they once thought, and by seeking freedom together, they may change the fate of the Empire itself. And so, let me tell you, the Empire's fate is changed forever. I've read up to basically book 2, and I still need to read A Reaper at the Gates, and I also need to read A Sky Beyond the Storm, and I'm really not looking forward to suffering and dying, and I know these covers aren't matched. That's going to be solved soon because I have the Fairy Loot edition of this coming, and I'm hoping to get the other copies of the US covers soon, as soon as Penguin decide to release A Torch Against the Night Collector's Edition hardback. Come on, Penguin, do your thing, do your thing. Yeah, these books were just so amazing. The world building is nothing like I've ever seen in a YA fantasy, and Sabatahir's craft and the way that she writes and the way that she develops her characters, like Helen, the colonizer, is just such a bitch. It's definitely very interesting to read and also to see this duality throughout Sabatahir's books between what is good and what is evil, and also this commentary on colonization and a bunch of other subjects that I just find to be amazing. And this series has honestly changed the landscape of young adult fiction and I'm so excited that I'm finally getting to experience it for the very first time. The next book then turned out to be one of my favourite stories of the year and it would probably make it into my top 5 if I had to reduce it down. This story is just amazing and that is The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. This one was just so good. It was so amazing. I fell in love with this story and I have no words to explain how much I love this story. And so it basically follows Kara, and out of the 380 realities that Earth can resonate with, Kara is dead in all but 8 of them. And so when one of her doppelgangers dies under mysterious circumstances, Kara is sent to investigate as she is hired by this company to explore different parallel dimensions and gather information. However, by investigating the death of her doppelganger, Kara will unveil secrets about herself that will not only expose a plot to unhinge her world, but also the entire multiverse itself. And the commentaries on capitalism, classism, the intersection of racism and classism together, this plot, the story, the sapphic romance. This story just has so much in it and I love it so much. Micaiah Johnson can write. Micaiah Johnson just is able to weave this story about a woman that has struggled and has fought for what she wants in life, which is basically just a home. She just wants a home for herself. Even then, her past, and this does have trigger warnings for domestic abuse, I will make that clear. It's just amazing, and I just really loved Kara as a character. I'm hoping we get to see maybe a story or two more in this world, because I've just fallen in love with Kara and Del. Like, oh, they're just so amazing. And I just find that this story just needs to be talked more widely about, because I don't see enough hype for it, and I'm just like, please go pick this book up. It's so stunning, and it's like 300 pages of just glorious sci-fi, and I am just fully obsessed with it. And I know May is reading this soon, because I basically forced her to read it like she's forced me to read other books, so I'm excited to see Meg's thoughts and what she thinks. The next book that I then read was one that I read during my romance reading vlog, and I fully fell in love with this story. My reactions to it have become a meme on Twitter, which has been fully amazing, and that book is Take a Hint, Dani Brown by Talia Hibbert. Now, this book follows Dani Brown, who knows what she wants in life: professional success, academic renown, an occasional role in The Hague to relieve that career stress. But romance, it's a distraction at best and a nuisance at worst. But when she is rescued by Sevilla, her building security guard, in a fire drill gone wrong, they're then shipped online as this massive power couple, and Dani is taking this as a sign that Sevilla is the one that she wants to fuck. And so when Sophia asks her to pursue this fake relationship that social media has set up for them, Dani goes along with it in the hopes that she'll be able to sleep with him. However, she doesn't know that Sophia is a hopeless romantic and is trying to change Dani's perspective towards romance. However, both of them have fears of their own, and will they take the hints that the universe is trying to give them in order for them to be together? And let me tell you, this story is amazing. Like, I said this in my romance reading vlog, the representation of male mental health is unlike anything I've ever seen. Especially as Talia Hibbert is a British author writing this, I just feel so represented by this book and the experiences that both Dani and Sophia have. Dani was relatable in that way because Dani was trying to tackle so much in her life that romance wasn't really an option for her anymore. I love this book so much. I cried at this book. It's stunning, it's gorgeous, the writing is amazing, the sex is steamy, and I fully support Talia Hibbert, and I'm so excited to read Actor Age Eve Brown. I know Mina has recently read it and gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and I'm just like, I'm super excited. I just endeavour to read more romance now because of Take a Hint, Dani Brown, and I just can't wait to see what romances crop up in the future. The next book that I then read was one that basically is going to change the landscape of YA fantasy, and I really need a lot more people to read this and experience this novel because it is simply amazing and beautiful and wow and stunning. And I will just show you the nakedness first of all because I feel like that deserves a moment of its own. And so the book in question that basically you need to go pick up if you like YA fantasy is Raybearer by John Ifweko. Now, Raybearer follows Tarisai, who has always longed for the warmth of a family as she was raised by an absentee mother called the Lady. And the Lady has now sent her to the capital in order to contend to become one of the Prince's Council 11, which is basically receive the Ray, which is an unbreakable bond set by the Prince, so that everyone is joined in this little council of love and adoration and support and warmth and basically everything Tarisai wants. However, the Lady has her compelled under a wish that when she receives the Ray, she is going to have to kill the Prince. And so it comes down to whether Tarisai will fall under the wish and be forced to kill the Prince, or will she be strong enough to resist and choose a different path for herself. And let me tell you, I'm saying let me tell you for a lot of these books, but oh my gosh, Raybearer was just a shining sun in YA fantasy. Raybearer really stands out on its own and stands out as like such a new and innovative way for fantasy. I can see a lot of people taking a lot of lessons via writing from Raybearer to show how YA fantasy can be and should be going forth, because this story is fundamentally important for young kids. It's something that doesn't put romance at the forefront of a novel. We have a sexual character. I just loved it so much. This found family aspect, this stunning just story, and something about believing yourself and believing that you are not what your mother or anyone else believes you to be. You can set your own destiny and you can set your own path. And that is something I think a lot of children need right now. I've just been so inspired by Raybearer, and again, it's such a stunning book. And the UK cover also stands out as really stunning as well. And so I would highly recommend you go pick up Raybearer and just read it and consume it. And I'm so excited for the sequel that I'm hoping is coming out like in 2021 potentially, although we haven't heard a lot about the sequel yet, so we'll see, but fingers crossed. The next book is another book that's going to change the landscape of YA fantasy, and this one is just so true to my heart and so dear to my heart because it's a Jamaican inspired fantasy, something that I have been dying for ages, and that in question is Witch is Steeped in Gold by Shannon Smart. If you ever heard me call her name otherwise, no you haven't. Yeah, Shannon Smart's Witch is Steeped in Gold was phenomenal. It was amazing. I truly felt the kind of enemies aspect in it. Kind of wished for it to be enemies to lovers, but there's still time for that. There is still time for that. But anyway, Witch is Steeped in Gold basically comes out in April of 2021, but I read it last year. This basically follows Araya, who is my queen, and she spent all of her life imprisoned, but every day comes closer to when she is free and when she gets to exact her plans of vengeance. And on the flip side, Jasmine is the queen's daughter, but unlike her sister before her, she has no intention of dying to give her mother even more power. And so the both of them have a mutual enemy, and they seek to team up in order to take her down. However, revenge is a bloody pursuit, and no one is going to know the lengths that either witch will go to in order to win the game. And so this story was just amazing. The world building was spectacular. The way that we got the little Jamaican cultural references, it was amazing. And I just really fell in love with the characters and the story, and the way that this ended. Holy Jesus, Shannon, I cannot. And I'm just so excited to see what's going to happen in the sequel. This is definitely like a Killing Eve-esque novel where we have a mutual obsession between the two main characters. We have the duality between what is good and what is evil. All of the characters in this novel are truly grey, and you never truly know who is the hero and who is the villain, except for the queen, because, you know, she's a bitch. I loved it. I loved this story, and I'm sincerely hoping you all have it pre-ordered or added to your Goodreads, because this is amazing. This is stunning, and the cover is simply beautiful, and I cannot wait for the sequel. The next book that then became one of my favourites in 2020 was one that basically changed the way that I viewed adult fantasy. A lot of you had been wanting me to read this series for a while, and so I finally read it, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried. But I didn't want to include the entire trilogy as my favourite books of 2020, so I chose the one that I believed was the best one. And for me, that was The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This follows Rin, who basically aces the Keiju, which is the academic test in Nikon. And a lot of people are shocked by that because she is a poor peasant from the Rooster province. And because of that, she receives a lot of bullying and hatred from her classmates for also being dark-skinned as well. But through this, she unlocks a deadly and unnerving power, the work of shamanism, which is the ability to call down the gods. And the gods that Rin thought were long dead are actually very much alive. And so Rin realizes that this power may be the only way to save her people from the third Poppy War that is brewing on the horizon. However, the vengeful Phoenix God has other plans, and winning the war might just cost Rin her humanity. And this series is a lot, I will tell you that. This is the ILLUMICRATE exclusive edition, just in case you didn't know. This series takes you on a ride, it grabs you, it doesn't let you go. There's just a bunch of things about this series that I truly loved and I truly hated in a good way. And I cried at the very end of The Burning God because holy fucking shit, R.F. Kuang, you took me on that journey. I'm so happy and thankful for this book. There is a lot of trigger warnings for this book, and you can find them in the Goodreads link in the description. I found that the writing was perfectly crafted, the world building was stunning and amazing. I found that R.F. Kuang was really able to craft a story about colorism and colonization and the impact of war and how devastating war can be, whilst also relating to proper historical events like the rape of Nanking. And I think that it's highly important that people, if they are able to, read this series and truly see how war and the things that people have done in war have impacted civilizations. This was stunning, this was iconic, and I hope you will enjoy it if you decide to go pick it up. The next book that is then my favourite for 2020 was one that is very much more lighthearted than The Poppy War, but also affected me in such a way that I truly felt for these characters and also left me with a really warm feeling at the end. And that was Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas, which basically follows Yadriel after his family has trouble accepting his true gender. He resolves to find the spirit of his recently deceased cousin Miguel and send it off to the afterlife in order to prove to his family that he is a brujo. But whilst having some help from his best friend Maritza, he accidentally brings back the soul of the resident bad boy Julian Diaz, and Julian basically wants to find out what happened to him and how he died, and so he refuses to move on until he does so, forcing Yadriel to assist him. And the more they find out surrounding Julian's death, the more the conspiracy grows, but also the further it becomes for Julian to move on. Yadriel, slowly but surely, the more he begins to connect to Julian, the less he wants that to happen. And this story was just so cute, it was so gorgeous, and it was so amazing. amazing. I just love Maritza, and I love Yadrian, I love Julian, I love the family dynamic, I loved the celebration of the dead in the Dia de los Muertos. I loved kind of how everything came together, the plot, the world building. It was just such a really nice, lighthearted urban fantasy, and I'm really hoping that we see more in this world. The ending was just so sweet, but also Maritza at the ending, like the way she does that thing, and I'm gonna say no more, because I get to this point where I just talk about books so much, I start to spoil them, and then I can't do that, but the ending is just iconic and amazing and wow, and I really enjoyed it, and it just fills me with warmth, you know, like these books are just so stunning and amazing. I cannot wait to showcase a lot more of Aidan Thomas's writing on this channel in the next year. The next book that was then one of my favourites in 2020 was in fact a sequel to one of the books that I read this year, and it remains one of my favourites because it just built so much more than book one, and I just felt more in this book than book one, and that book was Jade War by Fonda Lee. This book was stunning. This book was sensational. Jade War and basically the Greenbone saga follow the Call family, who basically ruled the No Peak clan, and they vie for control of Kekon's bustling capital city. They care about nothing but protecting their own, collecting tithes, and overseeing the production of jade. Jade being the lifeblood of these Greenbone warriors, as it gives them abilities, physical and mental, that help them protect the island from foreign invaders. However, when a drug is unleashed that allows anyone, even foreigners, to wield jade, the tensions between the Calls and rival clans begin to brew, unleashing into a massive clan war, and nothing in Kekon will ever be the same again for anyone. Jade City kind of launches it, but Jade War, it just goes the tensions just shoot so much higher in this book, and I really loved it. I cried near the end of this book because of things, and this was just such a stunningly written novel. I endeavoured to read every page. I was immersed and I was engrossed in the words and the story that Fonda Lee was telling. I found that my favourite characters were having fully fleshed out character arcs, and it's just really amazing to see every character in this book be treated with the utmost respect in terms of writing, and actually come into their own and actually have some sense of a personality and character arc. And I just love this book because Lee made so many like cool commentaries about the relationships that a lot of countries had with white countries and European countries, and the way that white people would try and like worm their way into the society of people of colour and like take things for themselves and try and like adopt it into their own society. And I just really enjoyed the exploration of that in Jade War, and I just find it amazing, and I just really loved the story and how it continued, and my heart is not ready for Jade Legacy, so we're gonna see what happens, but for now Jade War is a baby and I love them so much. We have 2 more books left, and then I have some honourable mentions, but the next book was one that was on my radar ever since I heard about it. It was a retelling of one of my favourite Shakespeare plays, and then I read it and I immediately was like, this is way better than Shakespeare. This is just worth so much more than Shakespeare. Like, I was ready to throw out that Shakespeare play and fully embody this. Like, if someone tells me what is Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, I will say, this is Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, which is basically a chef's kiss towards Shakespeare. So this Romeo and Juliet reimagining basically follows Julia and Roma, ex-lovers from rival clans, the Scarlet Gang and the White Flowers, who have basically been feuding ever since their massive breakup. After the events that transpire between them, Julia is resolved to end Roma's life once and for all. However, when a strange contagion leaks out in the city of Shanghai, people start tearing their own throats out, both Scarlet Gang and White Flowers alike, and so Roma and Julia are forced to work together in order to find the source of this contagion and stop it before they tear their own throats out themselves. The 1920s Shanghai setting is just beautiful. I really loved the kind of scenery that we got in this. I loved the character relationships. Again, like in Jade War, how every character really got some sort of personality and a little bit of fleshing out. I really just enjoyed the story and the way that it wove itself. I do not forgive Chloe Gong for that ending, and I know Noelle is now going to pick this up. I don't know how she's going to feel about this ending, but yeah, and now that the title has been released as well, like, I'm so excited for Our Violent Ends. Amazing. And this story was just so beautiful, and I find that Chloe Gong's writing is really accessible to a younger audience, and also really good for like people who just want to get into like a YA historical fiction story, and it's just amazing. And it does have like a few fantastical elements, but the fantastical elements come from kind of the mystery surrounding the contagion. So it's more historical fiction. I really enjoyed it, and I'm really, really looking forward to the sequel and the finale to this story. And so yeah, I just think it's gonna be amazing. And there's also stunning representation in this novel with a trans character, and Kathleen is my queen, and her role in this novel is so amazing, and Kathleen is just so stunningly beautiful, and I just love her, and she's great. And then my final major favourite of 2020 was actually one of my last reads of 2020, and when I read this, I completely fell in love with this story because, you know me, I love my sapphics, and so we have This Is How You Lose the Time Warp by Amal Ebmuta and Max Gladstone, and amazingly beautiful, stunning, wow. Among the ashes of a dying world, an agent of the Commandant finds a letter that reads, "Burn before reading." And so starts this correspondence between two agents of rival sides, red and blue. However, their conversation then delves into something more, something deeper, something potentially romantic. And they basically both learn that if their conversation was to be discovered, it would not only be the end of them, but it would also be the end of their conversation. It's something that could change the past and the future. There's still a war going on in this world, and someone has to win. And it's just amazing because this book really takes you on a ride, and it's such in a small capacity as well, and just the way that the world building and the story was conveyed was just so beautiful. It was so smart and snarky, and these characters are just you don't really get to be introduced to them, it's just straight away, but you learn so much about their personalities through the letters that they send each other that it's just amazing. And yeah, I just really loved it. It was just a little bit of snark, a little bit of beauty, and the way that these characters interact and fall for one another. These women are just amazing, and they're so brave and beautiful, and I fully enjoyed the story, and I highly recommend you go pick it up. And this is the ILLUMICRATE exclusive edition, which has one blue book and one red book, and I just find it amazing so that I can potentially buddy read this with someone. I could read blue's letters in the blue book, red's letters in the red book. You know, there's a multitude of ways to use this, but at the same time, it's just stunning, and I fully enjoyed it, and I just found myself to be so enamored and so intrigued and interested by the story. It just took me on a ride, and I read it within 2 hours. I really want to reread this soon because it was just amazing. And so yeah, these were all my favourite books in the year of our Lord 2020, in which the world went to shit. But luckily I had these books to keep me company. It was just such a nice reading year despite everything else that was going on, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what reads I have coming up in 2021. I do have some honourable mentions that I want to convey, because whilst I did have my top 10, it was really hard to whittle it down into that. So I do have 10 honourable mentions so that I can make it into my top 20 of 2020. As I'll quickly go through them, we have The Silence of Bones, The City of Brass, The Adventure Zone graphic novel Volume 1, Get a Life Chloe Brown, Red, White and Royal Blue, The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Clown in a Cornfield, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, and finally The Year of the Witching. And all of these books were just simply stunning, and I really enjoyed my reading experience of all of them, and I just felt that these books were just conveyed in a really, really nice way, and I recommend that you pick them up and read them. I definitely think in 2021 though, I'll probably just do a top 21 of 2021, just so that I don't have to restrict myself like this again. And plus, I'm planning on reading a lot more in 2021, so hopefully I'll have more than just 60 books to pick from, because then now I was only picking a third of my books to do, and I'm just that doesn't really give me a sense of challenge. I would really love a sense of challenge. So if I do read 100 books, then the top 21 is probably going to be quite hard to achieve. And so yeah, that is everything for today's video. If you liked it, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you're new here, be sure to click that subscribe button so that you're notified whenever I upload next. This week's shout out fates goes out to Raquel from Blonde with a Book, whose book Ophelia, after all, comes out in 2022. However, she has made a booktube comeback and is basically dealing out some spectacular content, so I'll have her linked in the description down below. Raquel is just amazing and such a wonderful friend, and someone who you should keep an eye out for when her book releases next year. And so yeah, if you wanted to support me on any other social media platforms, I'll have them linked in the description down below, along with my coffee and my Amazon wishlist, just in case you want to support me any further. And yeah, I'm just fully now ready to do my anticipated reads of 2021, so keep an eye out for that soon. And so yeah, I guess until the next video, bye friends.